one, go.
Right, well, good evening everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. I'll just ask Jeff Durham to Luke, who's outside, who should be in the meeting. While we're doing that, is there anyone who's aware of other apologies? I have Councillor Northcott, for whom Councillor Holland is substituting this evening. We have Councillor Moffat, for whom Councillor Burgess is substituting this evening. I don't know of any other apologies. I don't know if anyone else has any.
No, I don't, anyway.
No.
Okay. I think now we have Councillor Burgess and Councillor Holland with us. Councillor Maxfield should be with us.
I am.
Excellent. Councillor Williams is here. Just wait till everything is. There's Councillor Holland, Councillor Burgess, Councillor Williams. I think is here, although I can't see him. But so. Let's progress to item 2 on our agenda, which is declarations of interest. And I'd like to make a declaration, as I did the last time, non-prejudicial interest, which is that I am a member of the Moseley Railway Trust, who are, of course, behind application number 7, but I'm not part of its committee or anything like that. I don't know if anyone else have any declarations of interest to make at this point.
No, not me.
Councillor Jones.
Just to remind committee of a long-standing declaration of interest that I work for KEELE University. There is an application from the university, but I've had nothing to do with the application and I draw no financial benefit from it.
Thanks very much, Councillor. So I can't see anyone else indicating, so let's progress to item 3. The minutes of the previous meeting. Those have been circulated. I have no comments to make on them this evening. Again, I look for comments from members.
Move.
Are we content with that? I'll take this simply by acclamation. If I don't see anyone indicating, I'll take that people are happy.
I move them, Chair.
Fine. Yeah.
Well, speak forever. Speak now. So I think we can say that those minutes have passed.
Yeah.
Let us then go to item 4, our first substantial item this evening, which is the application at the University of KEELE. And I invite one of our officers to take us through this.
Okay, well, thank you, Chair. We don't have any further information to report. I'll take you through the, hopefully. So this is the location plan. Can you all see that? Have you got that on your screen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for members who aren't aware, that curved structure at the top is the medical building as one goes into the university, yeah?
So that's the main entrance into the university. That's the medical school. These are the IC buildings 3 and 4. So this is the application site edged in red. This is the hotel building that some of you may have seen is currently under construction. This is the building that's being built that I think was referred to as the MSIL building. And this is the veterinary school that was granted planning permission a few months ago, but is yet to be started on site. So this is the site plan here. So you can just see the site on that small location plan. So the hotel is over in this area. So this is the building with access in round to the rear and a parking area at the back. Just show you the elevations, which don't show very well unless I enlarge them. a lot. So it's a 3-storey building, about up to 17 metres in height, I think. And the materials are to be brickwork on the ground floor, and then cladding on the other floors with these, what they refer to as ceramic baguettes, which are kind of a decorative feature, a long hollow element which has either a square or a circular cross section that's fixed onto the elevations to form, as I say, a decorative feature. So I do have some photos, just a few photos to show you. That's the MSIL building that I referred to, that's complete. That's the hotel, which as a comparison, as I said, this building, the proposed building is 17 metres. The hotel is, the majority of it's 20 metres. I think that central section there, it goes up to 22 metres in height. So that's looking across the site towards the A525, looking along the internal access road at the site. So access would be off at this end of the site. And another one just looking back at the MSIL building, and that's IC5 that was built probably 5 years ago now. So yeah, that's it, if members have some questions.
Could I just ask, Rachel, do you have an indicative, I think we did see some indicative drawings of what they think the building would look like, which might be helpful for members if they're still around.
Just bear with me. So that's kind of a sketch, as they call it. And I do have details of the materials for you as well. We have recommended a condition requiring agreement of precise details, but oh, I don't know whether this is going to work. Sorry, I don't know. Oh, I'll have to come out of that.
So, I mean, unless members, and if you look for it, Rachel, if we take questions from members, because I think it's fairly clear there what we know what we're talking about. I think that's quite a useful drawing for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, if perhaps we could stop sharing that screen, and I could ask if there are comments from members. If you use the raise hand facility, that will be a useful way of seeing if anyone's got anything to say. Councillor Burgess.
Yeah, just as a matter of interest, what sort of cladding are they using? Thank you.
Bear with me. Just find, I have got an email, so I'll just find that. But it's a dark grey cladding. That's the only details really that they've given at the moment. The bricks are going to be a grey colour, the cladding is dark grey, and then the ceramic baguettes that they refer to are going to be kind of a lighter cream colour.
Right.
Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. Do we know what is a ceramic baguette, and will they be manufactured locally? And perhaps the more sensible question is, are they purely decorative, or do they serve an architectural purpose?
Well, I must admit I've not really heard of them before receiving details on this application, so I Googled it, and yeah, the description that it gave was these long hollow elements. Obviously that's where the baguette reference is from, and they are fixed onto the cladding, onto the elevations, and they're, as far as I'm aware, they're just purely a decorative feature. But I don't know about the the manufacturing, whether that's local or not. I don't know.
It wouldn't be a relevant planning concern, I don't think. Do we understand then that the baguettes are a beige colour and that the cladding beneath them is a dark grey? Because that doesn't really come across in the image that's been shown as an indicative.
No, it doesn't, and I did seek details, and that's what they've come back to me with. But we are recommending a condition that requires agreement of the specific details of them.
Perhaps what we could do, Councillor Holland, because I think your question is a pertinent one, is we can't, I think, condition this, but we could perhaps, when we resolve this evening, append to whatever we resolve. I wish, were we to be in favour of this, that these things could be found locally if possible. After all, there's plenty of ceramics made around here, and it would be nice to make sure that the stuff stayed in the local economy, especially at this point in time.
I agree.
Yeah.
Any further comment from members?
Nope.
Right, what I'll do is we'll do this properly this time, because I forgot last time, and I do apologise. I will ask members individually whether they're for or against the recommendation, and I'll just go down the list of participants as I see it. If when I finish I haven't called your name, please then say, because it may be that I've not scrolled down sufficiently. So first of all, Councillor Proctor, are you for or against the recommendation?
For.
Councillor Burgess, are you for or against the recommendation?
I'm for.
Councillor Jones, are you for or against the recommendation?
For.
Councillor Williams, are you for or against the recommendation?
For.
Councillor Reddish, are you for or against the recommendation?
For.
Councillor Maxfield, you are not a councillor, Councillor Maxfield, according to my e thing. I don't know why that is, but I know you are one. So are you for or against the recommendation?
I am for, thank you.
Councillor Holland, are you for or against the recommendation?
For.
I think I've covered everyone there. Please say now if I haven't. In that case, this recommendation is clearly passed. We can progress to our next item, where I believe we have a speaker. This is the Morston House application, item 5. Perhaps we should wait until our speaker is brought into the meeting, and then we'll proceed from there.
Bringing him in now, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I think we have Mr. Bassett now. He's on screen, although I have no video.
Yeah, I can see Mr. Bassett too, but he's on mute at the moment.
Yeah, and I can't unmute him. I don't know if Jeff can. I mean, it comes up.
I've just asked to unmute him, Chair.
Excellent. There we are. Can you hear us, Mr. Bassett?
I can. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. You're a little bit low. If you can turn your volume up, that might be helpful.
I'll get nice and close.
That's much better.
Yep.
So if I'm now just going to do a couple of things before I invite you to speak. First of all, I'm going to ask our officer if there's any additional information, because manifestly you need to know that if there is.
No, Chair, there's nothing.
Okay. So in that case, what I will do is I'll just briefly run through the rules for public speaking. So Mr. Bassett has 5 minutes to address the committee. They'll be timed by our clerk, Jeff Durham, and a verbal warning will be given when 4 of those 5 minutes have elapsed. When those 5 minutes have elapsed, that is Mr. Bassett's total contribution to the meeting this evening. He's welcome to stay and listen, but he can't field questions and he can't ask questions either. So on those terms, Mr. Bassett, I invite you to address the meeting, starting when you feel comfortable.
Thank you very much, Chair. Please indicate if anyone can't hear me at any point. Good evening. My name is Mark Bassett of Freese LLP, and I'm the agent for the application of MORSTON House. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I intend only to be brief. This application seeks permission for 31 studio apartments for students across the lower and upper ground floors of MORSTON House. The scheme is part of a broader redevelopment project involving the upper floors of the building, which already have permission to be converted into student accommodation, comprising 84 studios, having formerly been in office use. The principle of development is supported by your development plan. The site has previously developed land and makes good and efficient use of an existing building in line with the principles of the NPPF. As outlined in your officer's report, the site is in a highly sustainable location with a wide range of services and facilities accessible within an easy walk of the site. The proposed layout drawings demonstrate that the studios will afford a good standard of amenity to future residents, with each providing an ensuite bathroom, cooking facilities and a good-sized study area. Each floor will also have a centralised and spacious communal area. All rooms would have an acceptable outlook, and the noise impact assessment that accompanies the application demonstrates that sufficient sound insulation measures can be secured, and this has been verified by your environmental health officers. The application proposes no car parking. This has been informed by a number of site and development characteristics, but primarily due to the site's highly sustainable location within the town centre. The scheme will provide a cycle store with capacity for 98 cycles, and a residential travel plan will deliver a welcome travel pack to future residents, advising on the range of sustainable transport options available. Students will be made aware of the car-free nature of the development from the outset, and this, taken together with the site's sustainable location and the controlled parking schemes operated by KEELE and Staffordshire universities, we would suggest act as a strong deterrent to anyone wishing to bring a car. It is also notable that there is a high level of parking control on surrounding streets to the site, which would further discourage the use of the private car. It is noted that there is no objection from the Highway Authority, and that the provision of no parking for a larger student scheme has been recently considered by an appeal inspector at the nearby former Metropolis nightclub site. The inspector found in that instance that there was insufficient evidence to suggest that the scheme would cause a harmful effect to on-street parking or highway safety. Equally, we would suggest that no evidence exists that the application proposal would cause such harm, and for all the reasons outlined above, the absence of on-site parking should be considered acceptable, and there is no conflict with either the development plan or the NPPF. The scheme does make provision for a short loading area along the Midway frontage, which will be used for drop-offs and pickups and deliveries collections. In summary, the scheme represents an effective reuse of the previously developed site in a highly sustainable location. The application accords with the development plan, and we would ask that you follow your officer's recommendation to approve the scheme. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bassett. So first, before I open the item for debate, I'll just ask our officer if she has anything to comment on what she's just heard.
No, nothing, Chair.
Thank you. So I look for contributions from members. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Two things really. There's no mention of CCT surveillance coverage for the flats. Yes, there's some up there because it was a medical institute, but there's no mention in the report about any surveillance and any security what the occupants need, because the Midway is at this moment in time it's changed with the new applications coming in, that it'll be a good thoroughfare. We need it to be clean and tidy. So that's one thing. But my main concern is the travel plan, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Right outside the main entrance to Morston House, there is Pepper Street, which runs up to the cenotaph, and a lot of work has gone into the cenotaph, and I'm really proud that the county did a fantastic job of that cenotaph. But we've still got Pepper Street, which is an historical residential street many years ago, but now it's warehouses, pubs and shops. Now it narrows off to the top when you go onto the high street, and cars regularly go up there. There's two disabled parking bays, and an amount of cars go up there and go off across onto the to turn around for whatever reason, as you know people do. You're not supposed to do, but they do. And my concern is the main route for pedestrians to the town centre is up Pepper Street to the town centre and then on to the buses which are down by crossing the old civic offices. That to me is be the main thoroughfare for students, and that's what we want because of the we talked about the car parking. That's what we want. And again, at the other planning application, when that's occupied, there'll be, you know, it's quite exciting that Midway would become cleaner, safer. But my concern is that travel plan. We don't hear anything from county about travel plan. I have mentioned this. It's into one of what's in mine. I've read Councillor Sweeney, who was the council for the area, and I've also two engineers from the county. So while we are, I wouldn't expect the developer to contribute because there's X amount of money they need to progress, and we ask them for certain amounts. But I'd like a message going to the county that the travel plan is set out not only for this particular application, but also included in the, I call it the Old Savoy site. And as I say, it's narrow, it's quite wide at the bottom, but as you go up, the cars coming down or going up, pedestrians cannot get up. It's a bit of a pig's ear with deliveries and all the rest of it. But I'm sure if some effort was put in, we could make that a historical street and some quite nice old-fashioned buildings in there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Just to take up the first point you made, I think I'm right in saying that the adjacent site for students does have CCTV.
We asked for that, yes.
I'll just ask our officers whether they think that that could be a condition put in. That, you know, then there will be then comparative surveillance on the two sites.
Well, following the comments of the police who were querying what security measures were in place, I sought clarification from the applicants, and they said that there will be a caretaker or concierge service. There'll be a secure fob entry to the building and to the accommodation floors, and also that there'll be CCTV around the building, including the area of the bike store. But yes, it would be possible to impose a condition that requires further details of the security measures or implementation of the security measures in accordance with the details provided.
Well, I mean, it sounds to me as if most of that's in hand, but I don't see that it would do any harm for us to put such a condition in and just ensure that all of that is going to happen. As regards the councillor's other suggestion, I suppose we can append such a note to the county. I suppose the other thing we could do is, given that the applicant's agent said that in some sort of welcome pack they're going to say how to go around the town, presumably when students arrive they will not be familiar straight away. If we could include those sort of routeways that the councillor put in there, maybe that would set people off in the right direction, so to speak, from the very beginning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I just come back? And I do know that, especially females in the winter time, that park on the Midway, don't park on the Midway because you have to go around that corner. It's not a very nice place to go into. And this is something we'll look to in the future, I'm sure, Mr. Chairman, when more people come into that area. So that's why I bring it up, because people are concerned with the safety of themselves and other people in that area. Thank you.
No, I agree entirely, Councillor. I mean, I think that the town centre of all places should be a safe and welcoming place at all hours for people, and we shouldn't have people concerned about their safety.
Thank you.
Councillor Reddish, I think, wants to make a comment.
I've got a mental block here, I think. At Pepper Street, is it supposed to be pedestrians only? or are cars permitted? My understanding is that it's supposed to be pedestrians only anyway. But if it's vernacular, is there any way that we can say, no, we don't want that, we want it back to pedestrians? Because that would make it a lot safer,
that
wouldn't
you're
it?
right, and I think Councillor Williams hinted at this, that you're not meant to go up there with vehicles, but people do. And that's an issue for, of course, the police and enforcement.
Yeah. Could I explain, Councillor?
That's, we can take forward then
There's
and
two
remind them.
disabled bays.
Yeah.
Once you go into Pepper Street, there's two disabled bays on the left-hand side of the old toilets.
That's right, yeah.
For the cars to move forward, they won't U-turn and come back. They will go through Pepper Street and out the end where the...
I've seen that.
Now, other cars do that, and they park there illegally, and that's something that then we got, you know, it's got to be... but again, they go through that alleyway. So they do it illegally, Marion.
But the issue then is maybe we should send a request. I think it is probably the county's domain, isn't it, to put in one of those collapsible bollards. And I can see why for emergency vehicles, perhaps sometimes access is necessary, but most of the time, if we discourage it, that will be okay. Councillor Holland.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad that the applicant's agent mentioned the former Savoy, former Metropolis site, because it gives me the opportunity to say how I think it's obscene. And I was delighted that this authority refused it on 2 occasions, I think. And I'm very disappointed that the planning inspector saw fit to overturn that. Relevant to the application that's in front of us, though, I see that proposed condition 3 is to require occupation by students only of the development, and there is some discussion in the officer's report about the reason for this being related to not requiring a contribution for sustainable or affordable housing when they are purpose-built student accommodation. This isn't purpose-built. The building is already there, and I think I'd like to know a little bit more from our officer as to what condition 3 is expected to achieve, other than relieving the applicant of the requirement to contribute to the community in some positive way, because my concern is that we have a large concentration of student development in and around the town centre. I don't object to that. I think if people want to come and live here and they are students, that's great. But are we not placing a burden on ourselves as a planning authority by putting in place that condition that says that this building, all of it now, can be converted into student accommodation, has to be occupied by students. It couldn't then be let to other people who wanted to live in the town centre, and I'm seeking to understand.
Well, the application has been made for student accommodation. So in considering that, we had to look at whether any Section 106 contributions or any affordable housing should be required. Our policy is that for student accommodation, we don't seek affordable housing, and it's on that basis that we're not seeking that for this application, and therefore we're looking to ensure that it is for student accommodation.
Could I say as well, in reply to that, I think it would be very wise to keep this condition. And if we find that this property isn't let, and we all know, and this week will be very interesting in that respect for student recruitment and such like, we can then revisit this in the future. But I think if we don't put this on, there's potentially a volatile mixture here in the first place. And secondly, perhaps it will create problems for us, which we can't foresee at the moment. So I would be very much in favour of retaining this condition. And then there's always, I think our officer can confirm this, the possibility that that condition can be varied in the future if we think that's necessary.
Yes, they could certainly make an application to remove or vary that condition in some way, yes, in the future.
Now, I'm not sure if Sean wished to make a comment a couple of comments ago.
It was, thank you, Chairman. It was the comments with regard to Pepper Street. I was just checking the details on Google Street View. There is a restriction on going up Pepper Street, and it precludes normal drivers. And the only two exceptions are for disabled drivers, obviously to go to the facilities when they were there, and loading. So those are the two that are allowed. So vehicles do travel up there. The enforcement challenge would be to effectively stand there at the end of Pepper Street and check if every vehicle was a disabled driver. I can see the difficulties and the time resources in it, but car drivers subject to passing that restriction can go up Pepper Street. So.
Thanks for that, Sean. And again, maybe this is something we can take away and discuss in another context. I mean, just if that is being abused on a fairly regular basis, and given that now those loos aren't there anymore, maybe a folding bollard might be a way of controlling that problem, especially if, as Councillor Williams points out, it's going to become a larger thoroughfare for pedestrians as time goes by.
Yeah.
But I suspect that's a debate for a different place.
Yep.
We got any further comments from members?
Nope.
In that case, I will propose, I think Councillor Williams probably is happy to second, that we do put a condition in about CCTV, although I think that's not going to be hurtful for the developer, because it sounds like that's in place. It's just to make sure that's in place. I'll then go through the list of members here and ask whether they're in favour of the application or not. So I'll start with Councillor Proctor. Are you in favour of the recommendation, Councillor?
In favour.
Councillor Williams?
Commit.
Councillor Reddish?
Commit.
Councillor Burgess?
In favour.
Councillor Maxfield, who's been promoted to councillor, I know.
It just gets better, doesn't it? In favour.
Councillor Jones?
In favour.
Councillor Holland?
In favour, Chair.
I think that's everyone again. So that appears to be unanimously in favour of the recommendation. That brings us to our next application. Item 6, the Thorpe Precast, 8 Death Road at Chesterton. And again, I note that we had, subject to receipt of no objections from the Chesterton Locality Area Partnership. I'll just ask our officer if we've had any representations from that body.
No, but they do have until today, so effectively until midnight to comment. So there's still a bit of time for them to come back to us.
Right. So we should bear that in mind, and I think we should probably keep that rubric here. We don't want, I think, to remove it. I'll just ask our officer if, again, she has any additional information she wants to put in front of us.
No, just draw your attention to the supplementary report that was published yesterday. Hopefully all members got to read that.
Am I correct in thinking that that's the case?
Yeah.
In that case, could I ask for comments from members?
Move it, Mr. Chair.
I second that, Chair.
No, thank you, Councillor Proctor. Well, if there are no further comments, again, what I'll do is I will go through as individually. So, Councillor Proctor, I take it you're in favour of the recommendation?
Yes.
And that will be the same for your good self, Councillor Williams?
Yes.
Councillor Maxfield?
Yes, for.
Councillor Jones?
For.
Councillor Reddish?
Commit.
Councillor Burgess?
For.
Councillor Holland?
For.
And did I say Councillor Maxfield?
You've already asked me already.
The list of participants jumps around alarmingly for reasons I don't understand at the side. But anyway, I think again
I might be promoted next time, you see.
And that recommendation, I think, again passes unanimously. So let's pass to item 7, the APEDALE Heritage Centre. Again, I'll remind members I've declared a Not pecuniary interest in this. I'm a member of the trust, but I'm not any part of its management. I will, however, take this opportunity, Councillor Holland has already done this sort of thing, to commend the work of the Railway Trust to members and urge you to join this very splendid local enterprise. But beyond that, I'll ask our officer again if she has anything to comment on.
No, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Maxfield, I think, wishes to comment.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy to support this. I think, as it's outlined in the document, it's only going to enhance the area. It's going to be, you know, looking at the preservation for the future, and as you say, you know, it's going to attract new fans and membership accordingly. So I'm happy to go with this. Thank you.
Any further comment from members? No, Councillor Burgess.
Yes, I'm in favour of this. Many years ago, when I was Mayor of Kidgrove, I was invited down there, and ever since then I've always gone at weekends, probably for a coffee and for a chat. And over Christmas I even cleaned up the tables for them and helped that way. I'm really in favour of this. It'll do a lot of good. Thank you.
I'm delighted to hear that, Councillor Burgess. Next time, go for a ride on the train as well. I'm sure you will enjoy it.
I always do.
Any further comment from members? Again, then we'll go around individually. So, Councillor Reddish, are you in favour or against the recommendation?
Yes.
Councillor Jones.
In favour.
Councillor Proctor.
In favour.
Councillor Maxfield.
In favour.
Councillor Burgess.
In favour.
Councillor Williams.
Commit.
And Councillor Holland.
Full steam ahead, Chair.
Absolutely, but don't forget the diesels, which are in fact the best part of the collection, if I may say so. And the petrol-driven stuff as well. There's some wonderful material from the Great War there. Very, very important stuff. And on that heartening note of an extra advert, I think we can say that that recommendation is passed unanimously. Let us progress to item 8 of our agenda, which is the half-yearly report on planning obligations. I'll just ask our officers if they have any general reflections to make, and then I propose to take this page by page, and I'll invite comment from members on particular pages as we go along.
No, I've no particular comment to make. This is, as you know, the half-yearly monitoring report to provide you information. If there's any specific questions that you have on any specific items, then hopefully I can provide the answer.
Yeah, we'll take them page by page, Mrs. Moulton. So shall we look at the ones on page 44 of the agenda first? And ask if any member has comment to make on those 3, I think, items. I'm not seeing any. Oh, Councillor Jones, I beg your pardon.
Sorry, just on the second entry on there, the Brighton, about the open space provision, has that 106 payment been triggered yet? And if not, what is the trigger?
I couldn't tell you the trigger. I can provide you that information outside of the meeting. It will be set out in the terms of the obligation, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. At the time that the report was written, which was a couple of weeks ago now, it hadn't been triggered. Yeah, if you're happy for me to do so, I'll come back to you with that information outside the meeting. And if other members want it, I can copy all committee members into that email if that is of interest to everyone.
Yeah.
I think members will be content with that. Are you happy with that, Councillor Jones? Thank you very much. Shall we then progress to page 45 with the 2 items there? Members content with those? I see no indication otherwise. We pass to page 46, 3 items. Then page 47. Page 48. Page 49. I think Councillor Reddish raised an issue about the former Vandals site here.
Yeah, it's all right. Won't let me raise my hand. So I'll just speak. Yes, I mean, I was saying last week, I think that I think it's time that the financial contribution was sought for Randalls. It's several years now. I don't believe that Tesco's are so financially strapped that they can't help us out on this. So I'd like you to chase really that financial contribution.
The county council are in the process of chasing that. I can seek an update from the county council as to how far they've progressed, if anywhere, with the securing of that contribution. So yeah, we can chase through the county council.
7 years down the line must be some progress, really.
Yeah.
So I think, Mrs. Moulton, the best thing to do there would be, given that we've had another question, if you simply send one email which addresses all the questions raised by members rather than a sequence of emails, so that life will be easier for us all.
Yeah.
If there are no further questions, can we progress to page 50, please? I don't know where we are with the Councillor Jones. He's probably going to say the same thing as me, but fire away, sir.
Was this about the Silverdale station and good
Indeed,
shipping?
yes.
I'd really appreciate some sort of update on strategy here, because I'm reading quite a concerning pattern that these payments haven't been provided, that there's been a request to pay this in instalments, and certainly the volume of issues I've had from the residents of this development have been substantial, and I'm growing quite concerned, particularly given that the parish council has invested in a number of mitigation steps for antisocial behaviour, where that money, and particularly with regards to the open space, would have potentially contributed to that. So we've already had the parish council spend money to rectify some of the issues in the area. If we're chasing the developer for money, that really does concern me. So what is the overall strategy for it?
Well, in response to that, we haven't yet got a strategy, but it's clear that we need to discuss the matter with the council, the part of the council that recovers debts, because it's not a planning enforcement matter that within the planning service would enforce. We would require the input of colleagues in the finance section and legal probably to secure that contribution. So outside of this meeting, we will start the conversation with the relevant sections and agree a strategy.
For a short report on that to be brought back to the next meeting, so that we're on the ball.
Yes, it's feasible. As to whether we can get a strategy in place with colleagues in that time, given it's not fully in our control, I couldn't say, but we can get an item on the agenda, and it could be one of those continuing items, maybe every few meetings,
okay,
where we can provide an update.
We do that. We ask for at least an agenda item for this for our next meeting, so that's how we can see where things are going, and maybe in the meantime we can all think a little bit perhaps about what sort of strategy that we feel would be appropriate in these circumstances.
Well, certainly as far as I'm aware, this development is fully occupied. They wanted to, the developer has received the income from the sale of the properties, because I think they're all open market, so there should be no reason why they couldn't pay the contribution.
I agree entirely, Mrs. Moulton. I cycled past it this afternoon and it seemed to me fully occupied.
Yeah. Because I think initially when they approached us, it was because they were yet to gain any income. It was all expenditure and no income, but that cannot be said at this point in time, and it couldn't be said for quite some period.
Okay, so thanks for the information. As I say, if we can have an agenda item on this, please, for the next meeting, we can take it from there. Can we progress to page 51, which is just one item, Orchard House, Clayton Road? And again, I've just raised the question. It does look like this is well overdue. Whether we can start to think about how we are going to get hold of this money. I mean, we're looking at least 12 months. In fact, I think we're looking at a few more months, aren't we?
I can confirm this is one of the sites that has been brought to my attention, so I'm aware of it and the history of the development. So certainly picking at that sort of process of why the obligations aren't in the position they should be, we can look at updating members on that one.
Yeah. Maybe that could be bundled together with the previous item, Sean, as an agenda item, so we could look at the two things in tandem.
Certainly, I don't see a problem with that. Okay.
That, I think, brings us to the end of that item. Are members content with what we've said, or is there anything else that members wish to contribute?
No, fine with that.
Yeah. Quite happy.
In that case, let's progress to item 9, which is the report on extensions to 106 agreements. And again, I'll just ask our officers if they have any comments to make on the report.
Well, it is, in terms of the number of applications listed, a far shorter, smaller list than we've previously reported, and 2 of the 3, well, the Meadows Road one, that one was drawn by the applicant, and the Rycroft one has been disposed of through the final disposal process set out in the Development Management Procedure Order. So there's only one application now on the list, which is the Compound C and Compound D, which is taking a long time to get to a point where the obligation is completed, but that is down to the council, and a further extension has been agreed. Hopefully we will be reporting something different when we bring the matter back in the next quarterly report in a couple of cycles time.
My understanding about item 2 is that this has been withdrawn not because it's fallen through, but because the Working Men's Club have purchased different property.
That's my understanding as well, yes. And yes, thank you for providing that information. I'm not sure they would have withdrawn the application had we not approached them, because as far as they were concerned, they got what they wanted, albeit somewhere else.
Yeah. Are members content with that report? Can we see that report?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I see no dissent, so let's progress to item 10. And I don't know if our officers wish to comment on this. It's certainly one I think that we need to think about.
Wasn't proposing to make any comments really. It's just other than what's in the officers' comments at the bottom of the report.
Okay, our members, and again, we can't do anything about this. We obviously have to receive this report. All I would do is just ask members to read it carefully. There are certain procedural points made by the inspector, and I've already talked to the head of planning about these and how perhaps we can tidy this up in the future. Councillor Holland.
Thank you, Chair. I am aware of the circumstances of this application, although I was not sitting on the committee on either of the occasions where it came in front of the committee. I'm concerned that, I mean, as part of the report that we're looking at now, the inspector noted one of his comments that the formal record was sparse. That to me does seem a little bit like a responsibility issue for officers when they're recording and publishing decisions of the. My recollection is somebody who was in the public gallery, I think, on the second occasion it came, and therefore the occasion which was then subsequently appealed to the planning inspectorate, was that there was some consideration given. I think you were in the chair, Councillor Fear, when the application was discussed. And you always make a point that this committee should take pains to explain its decisions properly and to have a good, sound underpinning when we are disagreeing with officer advice. So I'm disappointed. There is an element of it, having not read the inspector's full decision, but only the comments that are reproduced in our report. There's an element of it that I would disagree. I think the inspector has taken the view that this is a wonderful and beautiful building that's being proposed, and I would disagree with the inspector's view, as indeed I disagree with the planning inspector on a number of things, including the utter monstrosity that is the former Metropolis, former Savoy Theatre. But that aside, which seems to me to be a failing of the inspectorate, where they're putting their own aesthetic views ahead of those local people who are elected to vote on such matters, I am concerned that if we're reaching decisions that are contrary to officer recommendation, that they are being recorded in a way that when it is transmitted to the inspector in the event of an appeal, fully represents the effort that has gone into avoiding costs award by taking proper steps to consider our decision making. And I feel that we do. I feel that we do that, and that's not been adequately communicated and represented after the fact. Sorry, Chair, it was a bit of a...
That's fair enough, Councillor. I mean, you highlight an issue which I've already raised with the department. I don't know if Sean wishes to comment at this point as well. He seemed to have his hand up, so if I just hand over to Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. No, the matter here with this application was actually around the sort of evidence being provided. Now, clearly I wasn't at that meeting. I can't discuss in detail how that meeting went. But the tests that were being applied by the inspectorate followed through from the national guidance, and they centred around this sort of issue about harm that was arising. And actually there are two tests that needed to be met, or one of two tests. They're either less than substantial harm or a substantial harm test. Now, when we sort of enter that territory, as officers, we will be looking to identify how is that harm manifest in its appearance in the street scene, against neighbouring buildings, the general character of the wider area. And what the inspector here seems to be sort of steering us towards is that clarity of detail. So when we use language like substantial harm, we actually need to be able to say things like, this building is harmful because its height, its juxtaposition, its materials, the fenestration details, the articulation of the building, all of these design elements need to be scrutinised. And in that sort of decision notice, and as by default as well, the minutes as well, the sort of reasoning becomes that the harm was X, and this is how. Effectively, the refusal notices have a role in the planning process with the subsequent resubmission applications that the legislation allows for, and they should be used as a stepping stone to enable an applicant to read the detail of what was in that refusal notice, see if they can address those concerns and come back with a better scheme that is policy compliant. So the refusal reasons have to have detail within them. And I think reading this is the point where the inspector has come back to this one and said, where was that precision within the reasoning? Now, as officers, we sort of pick up on that, and I appreciate that's something we have to work together with to actually draw out some of that information and help explain how we as officers hear the inspector making those decisions across the country, across the West Midlands, locally, and actually trying to help the community understand what is the concern and feed that back to the applicants as well. So it is a process we'll work with you on and try and help strengthen those feelings and those expressions of committee. If you feel it is a refusal application, we'll help steer and help you through that.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Councillor Holland for those comments. I do remember this application. I was on committee then, And I do remember the very extensive discussion, entirely because I agree with Councillor Holland's feelings towards this application. I would, though, say I agree with what has been mentioned about ensuring that the record truly captures the discussion and the reasons for refusal, where those be the case. And I do also acknowledge that you as chair guide us to ensure that we are forever holding the MPPF in our reasons when we formulate those for refusal. I would say, however, that we as a committee approve these minutes, and perhaps we as a committee need to ensure that when we approve such minutes, that we ensure that they capture our feelings towards applications whilst they're recent in our memory. And I think that's where I'll leave it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. It's a strange one. It's the first time I think I've ever encountered an inspector's report which has made these points. Obviously, we all have to learn from them, and I think what we have to do is take note of this decision and make sure that we don't make this sort of mistake again in the future.
Chair, can I make a point in addition to what colleagues have already said? When I read this decision, I was extremely disappointed in not just the decision, but the fact that the whole thing doesn't seem to capture the depth of debate that took place when this decision was made. I was there, I was part of the committee on that night, and for me, we seem to have missed the depth to which we went. It was a very long debate, and the inspector's almost saying that we didn't really take full account, and I'm afraid that's not right. So maybe there is a lesson to be learned, as we've said, and I'll just leave it at that. But there was a lot more debate than this report gives it credit for.
Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thanks very much. I agree with everything that's just been said, but I'll just take the point what Sean has made, and maybe we could, when training gets back, hopefully sorted out, we could use this plan application or something similar as a template to go through and make the points that Sean is making, that the way what we do say. And I remember with debating, Bert was right, we went right through, and the local councillor was there. But I think what Sean made some good valid points, that really we should be able to go through that, through this planning application, and see exactly why we should have, if we refused it, but in a way that the inspector would have been, not on his own side, but a little bit more solid in the decision that he did make. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No, I think again, who knows when we'll get back to being able to do these things, but I think your suggestion that a session on how to formulate refusal in a robust fashion may well be a good idea for a training session. So thank you for that point.
Thank you.
Councillor Maxfield, did you wish to make a contribution?
I'm just going to sort of say the same, really. I was there. I remember how long we actually went on this for. We had the residents were there. We asked about, the cladding, the size, and everything else. And as I recall, it was going to be quite imposing on the actual outlook of those who actually are living there. And we did go into it in quite a depth for a long period of time, and feel that the sentiment's exactly the same as colleagues have already said. It's quite disappointing to read this, because it is almost as if we've taken one look at it and just gone, nah, dismissed it without actually giving it any thought. And then the reality is that is not what happened. We discussed this for a long time. I remember it very well. I remember the gentleman who came on behalf of the residents, and I remember the head teacher from the school and who was there, and we saw the designs, because I can remember asking, did you actually have any input in that design? Because it wasn't sympathetic at all to the surrounding area. But the decision is the decision, so it's like I said, we kind of got to learn from it and move on, I suppose, really.
I think we've probably, I mean, what I'm hearing is the same thing from most members. As I say, as soon as I saw this decision, I did raise questions of record with our officers, and I think that is in hand. Our only consolation, I suppose, in all of this is that at least we are talking about the second application and not the first, which to my personal way of thinking anyway, was far worse than the second. Are members content that we move on to item 11, because I'd like to ask Sean to introduce this and indeed thank him for the work that he's put into this this enforcement document. Are we happy to move on to item 11?
Yep.
Yep.
In that case, if I could ask Sean you to speak to this item.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah. So this is thank you. This is the new local enforcement plan for planning matters. So you've already had an enforcement plan back in 2009, but since then, over the last 11 years, the government have sort of upped the ante. We've had the national guidance changes and the whole process has stepped forward. What we're looking to do in this is actually to provide a bit more clarity to people who are affected by unlawful development, where we go, how we handle cases. Now, I'll open up with one of the greatest challenges and actually frustrations for me personally about the whole enforcement process, is that it is a frustratingly long and time-consuming system that we have to work with. Now, there are two sort of key actors in the whole process. One is the local authority, but the other one is the planning inspectorate. So we can only manage our half of the process in terms of how our officers investigate sites, consider the impact, move forward to reports where necessary, and if we get to issuing notices, undertake that work. So we can, this report deals with our half of the process, but if we get to a position of issuing an enforcement notice or a section 215 tidy up notice, applicants have the right to undertake appeals and start to challenge our process. And there are developers and agents out there who make a living out of effectively playing the system. They know all the timescales, they know when the deadline dates are, and they will let things drag out to the nth degree. In some cases, it's more profitable for people to make money off an unlawful scheme. They know they're in breach of planning condition, but for them personally, they push on ahead, and if they get the enforcement action from PINS in a year, 18 months time, so be it. They've had their sort of chance to use the system. So with that sort of caveat in mind, that we can only, we're bound to a certain degree by the planning inspectorate, I will sort of run through. Now, a lot of the document is talking about general processes that we deal with. It deals with the sort of tools that we have at our disposal. But some of the key points is around the expediency test. This remains at the core of the enforcement process and is one of those elements that we need to be careful about how we explain its use to those affected by unlawful development. And it's there as a test to say, yes, the development might have been undertaken without the benefit of planning permission, but would we have approved it anyway? What is the harm? So those issues of, say, a garden fence right down by the compost heap at the bottom, and it's 2.1 meters high, so 4 inches above a permitted development height. Truly, we have to look at what the impact on the neighbours is, and we do get these cases where there is a technical breach. It is 0.1 above permitted, but actually the harm is small, and really, if we were to consider it as an application, the likelihood is we would approve it. So we have to use that expediency test, but it also works as well on those sort of more heinous type developments that are large and brutal and overshadow people, and we can say, yes, here's the harm, here's the impact on light, privacy, whatever the sort of criteria are, and we structure our enforcement notices around that. So it sets us a sort of a test that we don't pursue cases that really would have failed at the appeal process if we took them that far. There's a bit of impact on what our breaches of planning control, a bit of sort of advice in there. So the core technical document provides that. But one of the other sort of key parts around it is the sort of scoring matrix to identify how much impact a development has. And we also have in there the sort of high, medium and low criteria of development. So those which are criminal in nature, impacts on protected trees, listed buildings, those are our very quick reaction elements. They're effectively irreversible impacts on the environment, that if you chop down a tree, it can't be undone. So we try and react as very fast as we can with that. And then we subdivide the rest into the sort of notable harm, but that which can be with remediated or taken back, and that smaller stuff at the back as well. A key thing, and this will be for constituents, and this will sort of feedback, is how we respond to people. Now, in its current form, we've set out a series of timescales for how we respond to those high, medium and low. From that initial, we've got your complaint, thank you, in the system, and we'll look at it, that very sort of quick action within a couple of days. Then we'll try and visit the sites, and depending if they're in town or rural, we've got some timescales to try and get out there. And then we'll move to a response. Now, this isn't the resolution of the case. It's actually a point where we can turn back to a complainant and say, yes, there is something of a problem here. We are now going through the enforcement route, and we will be looking at our powers to do that. We can't go into the minutiae of some of these cases with people, because ultimately we might be dealing with prosecutions, and we don't want to be in a position where we're talking about the merits of our with a neighbour who inadvertently might explain that over the fence to the person being complained against, and thus weaken our legal case in a prosecution. So we will tell people that how we're progressing it, but we won't sometimes be able to go into that fine detail. Now, this is the first review in 11 years of the document, and I've set some timescales that I think as officers we can work to over the next year. I think in the first sort of couple of quarters, as we go through autumn and winter, we might sort of have some low performance on these, and we won't be at those sort of higher levels. It's something internally we need to adjust our processes, get the templates on the system, improve how we're working. But as we get into 2021, whilst we have targets of on the lower priority cases, getting back to people within 20 days to do a site visit, I'm hoping we're not just doing those working to the higher end figures, we're working to those sharper, lower targets, dealing with it in the shorter periods of time. So we're hoping that as we get into 2021-22, we're very much performing well within those target levels. Now, this is a first draft. We may look at it again in 12 months' time and think, actually, there are bits here that don't work. We can look back and review them and come back and use it. But it starts as a target to drive us forward and put some focus on this work and help people understand what we're dealing with. So that's the sort of purpose of the document and some of the targets that we'll be working through. Okay, I hope that's of assistance. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Sean. So I invite comment from members. I think the idea of reviewing this, and maybe in particular thinking about those time limits and such like, and seeing how that's worked in a year's time, makes a great deal of sense. But again, I'd like to thank Sean. I think enforcement has been a concern for many members, and I think this puts a framework in place which is something we can work with. There's lots of guidance in there. I think it's a document to salt away for members. And as I say, thank you very much, Sean, for getting the ball rolling in this particular field. So I invite comment from members.
Chair.
Councillor Proctor.
Yeah, again, I echo your sentiments and thank Sean for what's been done. We certainly all know, without going through the detail, that many people have been unhappy with enforcement historically. But that's behind us. And my view is that we should now move forward with this new system, with this new document, and let's see where we are in a year's time. But certainly moving us forward in the enforcement area is a very positive and much needed move. So I welcome it.
We got any further comment from members?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've often thought over the years that some of the enforcement it's more personal to the councillors in the area and their electorates than it has been in the planning process. And I think those enforcement have bogged us down, and it's very, very difficult. But I think if we can look at what Sean's done and see what pans out in the next 12 months, and hopefully we'll get us out of that, as Mark to say, attitude of it's about enforcement on planning, not on personal points of view within. And we've all been guilty of it, Mr. Chairman. But there we are. Let's see what we can get a bit more professional in the way we do our work. Thank you.
No, I agree with you, Councillor. These things become frustrating, and one has to approach these things with cold blood, not hot blood. And again, I think this document sets out a framework. We can see how it goes. We can review it in a year's time. I hope that it will provide a useful way forward. And let's hope that in a year's time we can all feel entirely vindicated by saying that.
Yep.
Any more comment from members?
No, I think we just accept the report and look at it again in 12 months' time, unless there's something really catastrophic happens before. And I have no doubt to think that that's going to happen, not going to happen, because it's going to need tweaking. But I'm sure there's no major issue. So let's look at it in 12 months' time.
Right, so let's then progress to our next item, which is a consultation item. And as you can see, it's actually a consultation for material outside of our borough. So this is the Severn Trent water site in Tunstall. Again, I don't know if our officers have anything to say on this. I suspect they probably don't.
No, Chair.
I invite comment from members. Are you happy with the recommendation?
Yep.
Yeah, accept the recommendation.
Okay, so let's say that recommendation is passed. And we can progress to item 13 on the agenda, SEABRIDGE Centre off Row Lane. And this is a sort of, I think it's fair to say, belt and braces item. About an item which is under appeal. Again, I don't know if our officers wish to comment upon it.
No, Chair.
And again, are members content with what is recommended here? It seems to me very sensible.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, quite happy with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I see no dissent, so I think we can say that recommendation is passed. That brings us to item 14, the Gladstone Villas, Victoria Road, Newcastle, an application for financial assistance.
Support the recommendation, Chair.
Members happy with this recommendation that we give this money?
Yeah, happy. Yeah.
So again, I see agreement around the screens in front of me, so that item is passed. That brings me to item 15, which is urgent business, as defined by the relevant section of the relevant act. I look to our officers. I know of none prior to this meeting. I don't know if any I've missed anything or any have emerged.
No.
No.
In that case, I shall call the meeting to its end. It's still very sunny here at Keele. I think we can all enjoy another hour of sunshine. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thanks to our officers for making this meeting run smoothly again. And I will wish you a good evening and hope to see you in the near future.
Thank you. Cheers, Chair.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.